Welcome back, everyone. You are watching the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage, and you are looking at a machine that is now ready for me to do the final test stitching before I return it back to its owner. This machine is the Bernina 530-2, and it is I've restored a number of these machines before. And if you look at some of the earlier videos that I made of this machine, one of the first things I did was I wanted to check the gears, because if the gears have a crack, then that changes the cost of overhauling them substantially. And so I checked that, and I actually went through the entire machine and then discovered that the decorative stitch, ornamental stitch selector was frozen, and it took me a week of jostling and negotiating with it to get it to work. It ended up taking a lot more time than I had realized, but that is true with most machines that have multiple stitches. The fancier the machine, the more fancy things it can do, the more opportunities it has to have problems. That's true of all machines, not picking on Bernina per se. Berninas are magnificent, obviously. They have a very devout following, but anyway, again, when machines sit for long periods, they can go dormant or to sleep. So we have one last thing to do before we do the test stitching. All of the cleaning and the lubrication has been done, but this is something that, again, for a vintage machine that's been sitting, this is not normal oiling and maintenance, but this is the sewing deck, right? We're going to put that on here to do our sewing today, and there's a little lever here that turns that allows you to lock the deck in place, and notice it is metal, and metal turning against metal. It turns fine. It's not giving me resistance. But let's put just a little grease here, right? This is the grease you guys see me use when I'm going to grease gears or the bearings in some of the motors. Some motors take grease, some take oil, some take none. So there you go, right? So now we have the grease in place. That's the last thing, the very last thing that we wanted to do before getting this machine ready to sew, or testing it rather. I often will try to look at stitch testing early just to see if it can help me diagnose any issues that might be going on with the machine. And so we'll just slide the deck on here. Oops, we're going to try to slide the deck on here. There we go. Now, by the way, if you're not sure how I did that, this lever was to the right. When I slid it on, then I slid it over to the left, and that locked it. If I want to unlock it, just turn it on, and you can see it loosen there. But this should hold it in place. And we are going to do some test stitching. Let's see here. We've got plenty of daylight, so I'm not going to use the electric light, which does work. It works beautifully. Well, it will when I plug the machine in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with straight and zigzag. So we're going to make sure that this lever, and if you have this machine or have the manual, you'll know that for straight and zigzag, we want this lever in the down position, closest towards you, when you're facing the machine, right? And then we're going to slide this all the way down to the zigzag symbol, which is right here. It's the first slot on the ornamental stitch lever, which is the lever on the left. Now this machine came, if I swing this over here, you'll see this machine came with a knee lever. Now Singer was clever, because Singer would let you could take a foot pedal and put it in a slot and use it with your knee, which was a clever ergonomic trick. But most sewing machine companies, when you ordered the machine, they asked you, do you want knee lever or do you want foot pedal? And you would pick one. I don't know that one was necessarily more expensive, but anyway, they gave you the option. You chose whichever one you wanted, and that's what you got. This particular customer purchased this Bernina, and most Berninas in North America were sold this way in a carry case. So it's not unusual to see the knee lever. I love knee levers, but again, that's a subjective thing. And one thing to notice, I've been talking so much about the mechanics of this machine, I forgot to mention, this machine was very well cared for. Look at the paint. I don't see, there's a couple of little places here and on top, little nicks, which may have happened when the machine was in its case. But look at the sewing deck. Look at this. And the sewing deck, you know, it installs in the case facing with its front to the back of the case, and it's almost perfect, right? Maybe a few scratches here and there, but really lovely. I've seen Berninas in really rough shape where the paint's all you know, worn and scratched off, which is not necessarily an indication of the quality of the machine's running shape. Never judge a book by its cover. But anyway, so what we'll do is we've got our cord plugged in. She plugs in the back. Some machines plug in on the side, but not this one. So I'm going to try. I've got to move you guys over here a bit because I've got to get my knee to the left of the knee lever without totally knocking this whole arrangement over. Let's see, maybe I'll lower the camera down a bit, give you guys a little bit better view of the fabric. This is just cotton, lightweight cotton. You guys often see me demonstrate machines with really big needles and heavy fabrics. This is either a 12 or a 14 needle size, but with machines such as this one, I like to use the smaller needles and the lighter weight fabrics, or medium weight, because these machines, this one and things like the Singer Slant-O-Matic multi-stitch series, they really shine when they're doing, I think, lighter work. They can do heavier work, make no mistake, but I really like this. I think this is the sweet spot for these machines, is really in garment fabrics. And so let's see what she does. We're gonna get our stitch length here down. We'll start with the longest, and we're gonna make sure the needle's up here. We're actually gonna start 0 stitch width, which of course will give us our straight stitch. So we'll just see what this reborn machine has to say. I just like to start off slow. And speed up there, and then of course we can back tack. And you know, if you're ever curious as to what your machine is doing, you can always do what I'm doing, which is just basically doing a sewing off, if you will, testing the stitches. And I'll pull this up closer later, but I wanted you guys to see. I've got green thread on in the bobbin, and then a black thread up top, and the stitches are very nice. I might want to adjust the tension just a little bit. This is a very lightweight fabric, right? So we might want to adjust it a bit. And but I don't see anything amiss or strange, so that's great. So we'll get our presser foot back down. Now we're going to simply make one adjustment here. Remember, vintage machines don't have computers to automatically bring the needle up, so you need to bring it up yourself, because otherwise we'll be pushing the needle into the fabric sideways, because I am, if you look at the needle, you see it move. I'm now into the widest zigzag. And we'll let the machine do its zigzag dance for us and see what it can do. And again, we'll keep it on the long stitch. That can go slow, obviously, go fast. Let's see here. Just get over here on a different runway and think what I'm going to do now is test the blind stitch. That's kind of a blind stitch is not an ornamental or decorative stitch. It's a utility stitch. But when they came out with zigzag and decorative stitches, this stitch is sometimes underappreciated, I believe, because it is having a built-in blind stitch is really useful. And particularly if you do a lot of altering or hemming of clothing. Oops. Make sure my tail didn't get caught in there. And of course with blind stitch, it's basically straight until it hops over. I think this one is every 5 stitches, I believe. Okay, and then we'll turn things around here. this way. And we'll need a tension adjustment here because with the blind stitch, it's, you know, we're doing different things. So let's loosen our tension. And we should see a different result here. The manual will often guide you in terms of tension adjustments that you need to make whenever you're sewing. So if you look, you're going to see what I've got: my straight, my zigzag. I've also got the blind stitch here, which you see with the little you'll see the other side here. You'll see where the needle hops over, thus the name blind stitch when you're hemming. And again, for the blind stitch, we need to, you know, we want to shift our tension a bit here. Now I'm going to turn, actually I want to get a separate piece of fabric because we're going to play with the, let's see what we've got here in terms of, there we go. We're going to play with the ornamental stitches. I want you guys to see what all the fuss was about in 1960, 61. And so now we are going to take a look at the ornamental stitches. So I'll just kind of pan the camera up here. So I've moved the lever, right? It's already been moved up because we were doing the blind stitch. And now we're going to take this and come up and we're going to pick something. Oh, let's see. I'll bring this up here so you guys can see what I'm looking at. Right? I've got different ornamental stitches, most of which are not really utilitarian. They're nice to haves, but you don't need them. Let's come down and we'll pick this little one. Looks like shaped like a, well, not quite a crescent, more like a half circle or something. And let's see, what else could we pick if we wanted to? I don't know, let's pick this one. There's a little crescent shape. We'll pick that one. And I've got it set on the widest zigzag. The other thing I want to do, and this is true, and it'll be in the manual for those of you who are curious as to how you how do you modify these ornamental stitches. I need to shorten the stitch length over here because if I don't, it's hard to see the pattern when it's on a very long stitch length, right? Because it's kind of taking a pattern and stretching it. So we're going to get down to a very short stitch length. And we will see what it has to say as far as the pattern is concerned, and that's really what we're after here. And of course the fabric is feeding more slowly because we basically have we've shortened the stitch because we want to see more of that pattern. And maybe I can try to shorten it just a bit more. Now if you shorten it too much, your fabric won't feed and you'll end up with a giant nest ball of thread jam that you don't want. But I can still see it feeding. Slowly, but it is. And I can go faster, but I don't really want, I want the machine to have time to do its job. We're asking it to do something pretty intricate here. And I find that the quality is better if you don't just floor it, you know, you don't want to slam the pedal and go. Give it time to do its magic. And you will see one of the reasons that Berninas were considered one of the finest machines you could buy at this time. It's not the only, because the Singer 400 series does a beautiful ornamental stitch. Of course, the Bernina is a little more automated because you don't have to put in a cam, but given how seldom people actually use these decorative features, I really don't think it matters as far as convenience goes. Okay, so I've changed the stitch tension, so now we're not getting all that puckering we got before. And you can see when I started with the decorative stitch, I had it shortened to like a number 1, And then I got down to like between 0.5, and look what happens. See how different? Both of them are nice. You may have a need for each one of these, but notice what happens when you shorten it really down to the minimum. You get this lovely effect. Let's see here. You will see, oh, coming from the other side. Now you'll see the bobbin thread, the green, and then see how it looks. And again, people would do this with, I don't know, children's clothes and aprons, maybe, you know, who knows. There were different projects you could use this for. Those of you who sew could educate me on different kinds of projects you might use it for. However, again, this is what took the most time for me to unlock, because I don't think it was ever used much, and then the machine sat dormant. And I mean, I spent hours trying to, get it to communicate with me. It finally did. And if you have one of these and the ornamental stitches don't work, it's okay. I really should have ironed this fabric, by the way. This fabric's a little wrinkly, so kind of forgive that. But it's not puckering here. That's actually just wrinkles on this, because I've got 3 layers of this lightweight cotton. But I wanted you guys to see. Let's go back and we'll see if we can go back to a utility stitch. Let's see. We'll go back. What is this one? Sometimes you don't really, you can see the symbol of the stitch, but you don't know what it's going to look like until you actually try it out. This one, I believe, and I can lengthen the stitch a little bit on this one. I think this is a multi-point zigzag. Now, multi-point zigzags basically give you, well, this is actually more of a wave shape, maybe. Wave pattern. And whenever you have a multi-point stitch, a lot of times what's happening is, whatever the pattern of the stitch is, the needle is going through the fabric more often, and that can be helpful if your machine does not have what are called reverse stitches. I think I have that right. Because in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, you see a lot of machines, Kenmore's were famous for this and many other brands, you would get reverse stitches, and the machine would basically feed the fabric but then double back on itself a little bit. And the purpose of that was to build in slack, because with knits you can't sew stitches very tightly or they'll pop because knit fabric stretch so much. And I think I've just reached, so you can see this one. So yeah, you see a wave, but that needle has touched down multiple times, and you'll see the green, the bobbin thread. Let's go back and we'll do one more. By the way, and if you can't tell from what I've been describing to you all, in terms of if you want to keep a machine running well, you don't have to sew the world off every week, but you know, 3 or 4 times a year, just take it out. If you don't sew often, take your machine out and just do some of what I'm doing. Just give it a chance to stretch its legs. It's really good for it. You're not going to wear it out. Unlike industrial machines, which typically don't have this problem, because unless they've been sitting in a storage unit, they get run all the time. And but for home and domestic machines, they often sit dormant, and so the best thing you can do for them, I rarely see a home machine that's worn out with worn out parts. Usually it's the opposite. It hasn't been used enough. Okay, let's come down, and I want to try. Let's go back to the blind stitch again. Now I have, on a fairly short stitch length. We're going to now, let's lengthen the stitch. And I'll let you guys see the difference here. Okay, so this is the top thread, this is the black. And you can see the blind stitch. I had it fairly short. You may not, normally if you're hemming trousers or something, right? So you can see this blind stitch. You don't see the puckering you saw before, because I've lightened the stitch tension, the thread tension, excuse me. But that's a lovely blind stitch. Again, if you don't alter clothes, you may not. This is the wrinkly side of my fabric, so those are fabric wrinkles, not tension issues. But I really like this because, again, I think you have this automatic feature to the Bernina, and of course you would eventually the Singers and all the other brands would have it as well. But if you have a machine like the Singer 400 series, any of the Singers that take cams, or any machine that uses cams for decorative stitches, you don't worry. The cams work great. They're not that much of a pain to get in. I mean, unless you're going to be playing with cams all the time and constantly changing, which I don't think many people do at all, cams are not an issue. In some ways, the cam can simplify the mechanics of the machine, because the more automation you have, the more complex the drivetrain and the machinery. This is why the Singer 401A is more complex and can have more problems than the 403A that you guys have seen me overhaul recently, because the 403A can do everything the 401A can, but it needs cams. But those cams help to simplify other parts of the machine. But if you guys remember, you will recall that we had different items that weren't moving well. We had our needle position that was gummed up. We got that taken care of. We basically have adjusted all of these buttons that you see. I've gone in behind. I've gotten the mechanism behind the plastic free, and they move great, right? So they don't have those issues. Here, if I want to drop the feed dogs, I simply turn this dial. It turns beautifully. And it was barely moving before, and that's why, remember, I've told you guys, if it gives you resistance, if it's stiff, just stop, walk away, and then you want to get behind it. We got behind in here and got it lubricated, and she works beautiful. So you can turn it this way. I just lowered the feed dogs, and then if I turn it back to the left, they pop right up and they're ready to go. But the point is, this is moving freely and easily. It's not fussing, and that's really important. So just to show you guys, our bulb does work. I find the light bulbs are a little bit glaring when I've got daylight. But I appreciate all of you watching and following along with the Bernina. I have mentioned to you guys, I think I used a FOF sewing machine recently to talk about the fact that European sewing machines can be magnificent, but they require, typically, and this is the average, they require more time, more effort, more sweat, more frustration sometimes, and just more time. They take a lot more to overhaul, partly because many of them have the automatic features and more complexity. They do more stitches, but the other reason is the way they're designed. So if you are going to be thinking about overhauling machines, I'm going to make a video talking about my favorite brand. If you're just getting started in restoring sewing machines, where might you start? Where you have a good chance of success, and any of these can be challenging, but that's okay. That's part of learning. But you might decide to take on a Bernina or a FOF or any other machine, and more power to you. You've got the guts and the courage that not everyone does. However, you want to know that you can expect it to be, on average, more challenging than some of the more simply engineered machines. But Berninas are amazing, and this is an heirloom in a family, and so happy to see it running again. If any of you have any comments of your own and what you think of Berninas or European machines, leave your comments down there in the comment section, and appreciate you all watching. And stay tuned. I've got a few more machines to overhaul and talk about, and then we will be going into what I suspect will be kind of a winter hibernation. This is because I only showcase machines outdoors because of the COVID, and unfortunately, January and February are rather unpleasant to be outdoors. So if we have nice days, I might be able to show machines to people. But if not, we'll see what we can talk about and come up with during the winter time. But winter will be a slower period. I will be still restoring machines, but at a much slower rate. I have other projects that I'm taking on. But we will still be here, and in the spring, I hope, if I still have any machines left. Right now, machines are moving like donuts. People are basically selling and buying machines because a lot of people are sewing at home. It's great that people are sewing at home. Not, it's kind of a sad reason that everything that we're all going through, but at least people are needing machines, and there are a lot more machines being put for sale, sometimes at very high prices. So if any of you see machines for sale, whether it's a Bernina or whatever, just ask the question, has it been serviced? Because if someone tells you it runs, they may not know anything about sewing machines. Don't assume they're lying to you. They're probably giving you their best guess, but that's not good enough. If you are looking for a vintage machine that has already been restored or overhauled, you should be willing to pay more for that because you're paying for the labor and any parts that it needed. If you are not and you don't care about that, you want to keep that in mind when you decide how much to pay, because you will either need to pay someone to overhaul the machine, or you may take it on yourself. But just factor that in, right? It's very easy to get caught up in the romance of some of these amazing brands and machines, and you are looking at one right here, the Bernina. But like any machine, even a Singer straight stitcher, which I love, you guys know I love those. Even those can be challenging, but they're worth it, right? Because these are really amazing machines, and the world doesn't produce anything for consumers like these anymore. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned, and we will see you next time.